people who go and visit the US think it's so strange how segregated we are and how much racial tension there is. And yeah, there's a precedent for that. It didn't come out of nowhere. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, and today we're going to be talking about anti-Black racism in the United States. And before we start this video, I just want you all to know that this is just one of the videos I have planned that talks about anti-Blackness. The next video will be about anti-Blackness in the Asian American community, and the next video after that will be about Gone with the Wind. So if you're interested in hearing about those topics, please subscribe and stick around. The murder of George Floyd has sparked a revolution across the world. People are marching to abolish the police and to overturn the racist and capitalist system that white men have created on stolen land in order to keep Black and brown folk down. It's honestly amazing to see so many people out in the streets, looting, rioting, fighting. The people on the front lines facing the literal US military will go down in history as heroes. But I'm not here to talk about the protests. Instead, I want to delve into the history that led us here. I think a lot of people outside of the US, as well as in the US, have no idea how racism and anti-Blackness came to be or how white supremacy works here. So I thought I'd make this video to talk about the covert and overt ways white supremacy operates in the US to help educate people both in and outside of the US. And know that this is only one short video. You should do your own research on the topics I'm going to be talking about and not depend on Black people to do all the heavy lifting for you. So let's begin. Part 1. Overt white supremacy. Racism in the US can take many forms, but they can be mainly separated into two categories: overt and covert. And it's important to note that overt white supremacy isn't just overt, it's also deemed as socially unacceptable. For example, lynching using the N-word, the KKK, using other racial slurs, etc. It's also important to note that these are still highly debated as not that bad, but broadly speaking, these things are socially unacceptable. Overt white supremacy only makes up 5% of the pyramid, and that's because white supremacy mostly works covertly and is socially acceptable. The most important of these right now being Black people being murdered by the police. That is socially acceptable, and that is what the protests are trying to change. So, part 2, covert white supremacy. So now let's get into more covert, government-sanctioned racism and discrimination against Black people. There's a lot of ways this happens, but I'm only going to be talking about 6. And again, I highly encourage that you do your own in-depth research after this video in order to educate yourself. So number 1, school districts. In the US, you can't go to any public school you want. You have to go to the school in your district. And because schools are funded by property taxes, the whiter and wealthier towns have better schools and funding, and vice versa. Because of highway, housing, and sundown laws, as well as individual white people creating petitions to not have Black people live in their town and the racist courts supporting them, the government and white individuals have made sure that Black people stay far away in towns with very little property value, so Black children aren't able to get a good education. So they don't go to college, don't get jobs, and instead go through the school-to-prison pipeline. So number 2, gerrymandering. In the US, voting districts are extremely important. If you win the majority of districts, your party wins. And you're probably thinking, how do we create these districts in order to make voting fair? We don't. Politicians draw district lines in order to manipulate the outcome in favor of themselves. That is gerrymandering. And this usually means drawing lines racially in order to suppress Black voters so they have very little or no say in their local and national elections. So number 3, government-sanctioned death. The US doesn't just allow the police to murder Black people, but also doctors. In 1932, there was the syphilis study at Tuskegee University, where Black men without their knowledge or consent were given syphilis just to see what would happen. And this project didn't end until 1972, only 48 years ago. Black women are 2 to 6 times more likely to die during childbirth compared to white women. White and non-black POC don't take their black patients' health seriously. A lot of them aren't even educated in how illnesses show up and affect black people differently than white people, and this leads to even more death. And this is really terrible because black people tend to have a lot of health issues just due to living in the world while black. This stress manifests itself in heart disease, diabetes, asthma, mental illnesses such as depression and anxiety, etc. And knowing that the medical industrial complex doesn't care about black people means that black people are more likely to die younger. It's also important to note that black trans and black disabled people are more likely to die at the hands of police and also at the hands of doctors. Number 4, how the US stops racial mixing to prolong white supremacy. Separate but equal, or Jim Crow laws, were implemented in the US after the Civil War, which happened from 1861 to 1865. This meant that black people had to live in separate towns, away from white people, went to separate schools, couldn't enter white-only spaces, etc. These laws were enacted in order to keep black people from rising up in society post-slavery. However, black communities were thriving in the late 1800s and early 1900s, but white people did not like that. White people staged hundreds of lynchings, riots, and massacres in order to destroy black communities and keep them from prospering. And this mainly came in the form of weaponizing white womanhood. The most common reason for a lynching was that a black man was accused of looking at a white woman. And we can see that this tactic is still used today. The most infamous massacre being the one that occurred in Tulsa in 1921 for this very same reason. Black Wall Street, as it was known, was burned and bombed to the ground by white people. Black businesses were destroyed and all that wealth that they accumulated was lost. Segregation laws, which were already enacted during this time period, began to take an even fuller effect as black bodies were more policed than ever before. Black people were and still are treated as second-class citizens even after they built this country with their blood, sweat, and tears. And side note, black bodies are still being used to build this country, especially when it comes to pop culture and consumerism. Not to mention the prison industrial complex, which is basically slave labor. But to get back to government-enforced segregation, there were miscegenation laws in the US for the better part of 3 centuries. These laws meant that people of different races couldn't get married or have a family. And this law was not overturned until 1967, only 53 years ago. And let's talk about how black women can't even find a partner of their same race, because if you didn't know, there are more than 1.5 million black men in prison. Can you even imagine that? That's how much the US white supremacist government wants to kill the black American population. Separate but equal continued post-World War II as Americans reaped the benefits of the Highway, Housing, and College Acts, which conversely put black people in an even worse socioeconomic position. And while on the subject of war, the US military preys on young black men because they not only see them as disposable, but also their most desperate recruits. And today, post-Jim Crow, post-World War II, black people still can't go to the good school districts. Black single mothers are put on probation for months, if not years, for trying to get their child into a better school district, while white women get community service. Black people are still getting killed by the police, by their doctors, and their votes are still being suppressed. It's really no wonder why they're rioting and looting, is it? When I talk about these laws and systemic racism in the US to people outside of the US, it's really mind-blowing. Many people, at least in Brazil, have no idea that it was illegal in the US for black and white people to get married. Many people think that segregation is only shown in movies to cause drama. Like, no, that was real. So, number 5, let's go even further back in time and talk about slavery. And yes, this is a very socially acceptable way white supremacy worked in the US for a long time. Slavery was an integral economic institution to the United States for a long time, and I would argue that it is still integral today, as prison labor is mainly done by black men and women. The police we know today are product of the very first type of police the United States had, which was the slave-catching police. Slavery employed white people, slave breakers, slave catchers, overseers, transporters, slave auctioneers, and more. Do you even know how many people it takes to break someone's psyche, let alone their body? Slavery didn't just employ white people, it also manufactured all of the tools you need to enforce and maintain slavery. Whips, chains, paddles, muzzles, and other torture devices were made, bought, and sold. It wasn't just the products of enslaved people's labor that kept the U.S. economies going, but all of the jobs and products it created that also in turn created wealth for white people who weren't plantation owners. And yet, through all of the abuse and torture, slaves still revolted and freed themselves. And the descendants of slaves walk among us today. So 6, and my last and final point, is just about how individual white people hold up white supremacy. As an ESL teacher in Brazil, I used to get a lot of questions about the N-word. If they could use it, what it means, is it the same as negro ou negra in Portuguese? And I always gave them the same answer. Just don't say it. A lot of young people in Brazil love trap music, rap music, and hip-hop because of TikTok. They watch their favorite white TikTokers lip-sync to Fetty Wap, and they think that it's really cool, and they want to say the N-word too. And it's like, you can't. And if you are truly an ally of BLM, that's the only explanation you need. As for my older generation of viewers, go to your grandma's house or even your mom's house and look for racist relics of the past. A mammy doll, black marionette dolls, a black caricature etched into a box or vase, a horribly racist children's book about savages living in the dark continent. Trust me, I'm sure you'll find at least one. There are so many racist toys, books, and figurines out there that white people have kept and collected, and that's their only interaction with black people. It's honestly extremely frightening. Anyway, we have reached the conclusion. I know that this video was kind of jumbled, but I hope you now know some ways the US government enacts white supremacy and racism against black people overtly and covertly. A lot of people who go and visit the US think it's so strange how segregated we are and how much racial tension there is. And yeah, there's a precedent for that. It didn't come out of nowhere. So please, before you open your mouth, educate yourself and don't expect black people to do all of the work for you. In the description of this video, I'm going to leave some links to black creators that I watch here on YouTube, and also some resources you might find interesting, specifically about the Jim Crow Museum, which houses racist artifacts. And lastly, if you enjoyed this video or if you learned something, please like, share, and comment about what you think about overt and covert racism in the United States. Thanks again for watching. I post here every Friday. Next week's video will be about anti-black racism in the Asian American community. So if you're into that or want to see that video, please subscribe and ring the bell. Thank you again for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.